This one's for consultants, advisors, service providers, anyone new to this role or maybe transitioning from working for an agency to working on your own. One of the main fears that I have myself experienced as a consultant, and I've seen, well, other colleagues go through it as well, is what do I do when my client starts asking me questions that I don't know how to answer? Like, you don't want to appear unprofessional, so what should I do? Like it's just like navigate. And there's a lot of unnecessary stress and a lot of unnecessary unhelpful chatter going on. So in this short-ish, because I'm kind of a yapper, in this short video, I will share some tactics and long-term strategies about working with clients that will help you feel more prepared and feel more calm and confident on these client calls so that you can actually show up more present and being able to help more, because you wouldn't be worrying too much about things like, oh my god, what if I say the wrong thing, da 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 da. So, and who am I to be telling you this? Well, you can read my bio and check me out on LinkedIn. Credentials are there. But don't pause this video. So my name is Agata, and I've been working as a mostly Salesforce consultant and system specialist, mentor, teacher for the past 7 years. I've done a lot of those. I've done a mix of different services that predominantly meant working one-on-one with clients and managing their projects, both being hired as a consultant in an agency, as an in-house specialist for a company, and also I've been running my my own consulting practice. And especially when I started working for an agency, and then when I started working on my own for myself, those were the times where I felt extra stressed about working with clients and, oh my god, what if I don't know how to answer their questions? But it's 2025, I've gotten experience, and today I would like to share some lessons that I wish I've known back in 19, 18, or whatever it was. Sorry, I started counting this. Anyway, to the video. Well, first of all, you do not need to have all the answers. I think that's clear. But I also know that if I only say, oh, you don't need to know everything, it's just like, well, cool, thank you, but it still doesn't help. So, but that needed to be said, that nobody with like a kind of like right expectations would expect you to know every single thing. However, I would also like to say that part of the reason why I feel much more confident and calm and collected, and I don't need to spend that much time preparing for, of course I can prepare it, but I don't over prepare and don't get overly anxious before client interactions, is that I have experience. I've been there, done that. And like I clocked in however many hours I clocked in, and spent some time learning. So make sure that you have a habit of closing this knowledge gap. Of course, you won't know everything at once. Like, it comes with experience, it comes with repetition, it comes with mastering whatever skill you are selling or you are offering, right? So really making sure that you have this time to, well, not only read and watch videos, but also, maybe shadow, maybe mentor. There's so many ways in which you can practice. Also, when you are employed, you can see how other colleagues are doing it, more experienced, more senior colleagues, how they're running the call. This is also like a learning. So there are many different ways. So please make sure to have that time because it will help you. But that's kind of like a long-term strategy, right? And if you need support now, that's where the rest of the video will be helpful. So there are 2 tactics that I would like to share, kind of like what can you do on the cold call basis to minimize the risk of being asked some questions that you have no idea how to answer. So kind of like how to prepare best in the most efficient way. That would be the first part of the video. And the second would be more about what I wish I knew about working with clients and kind of approaching client cooperation in general, because I think this will also help you. Like, it helped me relieve some of the pressure, this like perfectionist pressure that I had, and I hope it will do the same for you. So when it comes to tactic and how can you prepare for calls, is there are two things that you can immediately start doing. So review what are the meeting agendas. If you just meet to meet or update to update, then there's a lot of potential of conversation going in so many different directions. I'm painting directions here. However, when you are more specific and you take this time, and it doesn't have to be long, because I also know, and this is especially if you're working as a consultant, that you probably have a lot of those conversations, but really taking like 15 minutes to be like, okay, what are the topics that need to be covered on this call, and write it in the agenda, and having like a proper subject of the meeting, especially if it's like like fortnightly catch up, weekly catch up, whatever it is with client, whatever is the cadence that you have. Being more specific about what's the goal, what's the outcome, will help you keep the conversation on track, right? Because this is one of the things that make those calls potentially stressful, is that you never know what will happen, what kind of question they come up with. And the more prepared you are, as in like, this is the agenda, this is the outcome, these are the points that we want to cover, you can kind of anticipate what would be important for them, what questions could there be. And that also helps when when you ask something, like maybe not super out of the blue, but something that you don't necessarily know how to answer. And of course, we're not bullshitting. Like, there are enough people who bullshit their way through life. We don't need more people who do that. That there's more than enough. So if you're like not sure, you can also like use this opportunity as like to park this, right? Because you communicated what the call will be about, what's the objective, what's the goal. So anything that's like kind of like slightly on the fringe of what you were supposed to talk, that you don't know how to address, and you would prefer to be to answer it offline, you can tie back to the goal of the meeting, and do your research and come back with an answer in an email or whichever form is suitable. So that's one thing that will help you. Similarly, having some kind of form, like a question form. It doesn't have to be like like a questionnaire. Like, sometimes you will see business owners who offer like power hours. They would have like 3-4 pages questionnaires that you need to answer, which makes total sense, because then you get to when you have like a one-off consultation, you can dive straight into the topic. Of course, you don't have to make anything that exhaustive, like if it's like a long-term cooperation. But having like 1 or 2 questions, like what is the points, what is like the main topic, will also help you prepare and see what's on their mind. So kind of like giving yourself the opportunities to control the call in a way, in a sense, right? To really lead it and not be like, ooh, because also what makes a good advisor, consultant, whatever is it that you're doing, is actually guiding the client. Like, you are the one who's kind of in control, and this is the mix of being flexible and making sure you're moving in the right direction. So this kind of like keeping a frame on what you're talking about, and that also creates more trust from clients, because they feel like, okay, they've got it together. So that's like in general, like those tips are in general good practices that you can use in your role. What I will also ask you to consider is thinking of like like breathing techniques, and kind of like calming down your mind. You don't have to be like, okay, wait 10-minute meditation, but just being like more like longer breathe in, long breathe out, like kind of working on that can also be helpful in not getting into this like alerted state. So that's something that like you can try out to be more present. That can also help. So these were more about like the cold call tactics. But when it comes to relationship with clients in general, and that's something that I've learned later in life, actually, when I started working in my own business, is that a lot of this pressure and a lot of this like negative mental chatter comes from this kind of us versus them thinking and this kind of like need to prove. Like I don't want to like psychoanalyze you because I have zero competences in that, but I can tell you in my example that and people that I've worked with is that I've learned it a couple years into consulting, so not from the very beginning, that actually, you know what, it's not us versus them. Like your clients want you to succeed. Like think about when you hire someone, like you hire a coach, you hire a mentor, you hire like whoever, like whatever service provider, you want them to do a good job. You know what I mean? Like you already paid for it. Like you, yeah, you like them or you are, you know, maybe you like them, maybe not, you know, maybe you're like just wishing them well, but you want them to succeed. You had an issue, you had a problem, you had a desire, you know, like whether a problem is that you cannot organize yourself or your desire is to have a healthy diet, whatever you need, or you know, or like figure something out. Like you already paid them, you want them to be prepared. So that's exactly the same thing when you are the consultant, when someone pays you either because you're a business owner or because you are hired by an agency. Like they already trusted either you or your boss or whoever gets the paycheck. um so why should they be like grilling you? You know, like when I ask questions, it's because they care, not because they want to grill you or just like, you know, like you're not that good. Like who does that? Like, you know, and I think we often forget about it and kind of like get it to our ego being like, oh my god, like none of that. So kind of I think what helps is really when you think like, hey, like they also want this project, like they support me, like they also want this project to succeed. I think alleviate some of the pressure. So if this helps you, that's also something that I invite you to observe and think about. Another thing is, and it also ties to the question and kind of like role of a consultant or an advisor, like, and also, you know, use it with care because there are some cases in which this advice is applicable and there are questions where it's not applicable. So um, but oftentimes it's like a role of a good consultant or advisor is to guide the client through a process, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be like a big transformation. um, Although, you know, making a website from lack of website to a website, from a non-existent systems to centralized system, it is a sort of digital transformation, if you may. But you are guiding them through a process. You know, they are going through some process. And so your role, yes, it is to some extent to give information, but it's more about actually asking what's behind this. So what also helps is that you sometimes, when you get like an out of the blue question that you're like, is asking like, oh, that's an interesting question, like, can you give me more details, can you give more background? Because oftentimes there is a deeper meaning, maybe not deeper meaning, but there is like like this is just a symptom, and actually they need answer to a root cause. And the more kind of like follow-up questions you ask, like what I'm trying to say here is that you don't have to, like, you're not like, ChatGPT, how many states are in the okay, this was a very easy question, but you know, it's not like a Google where you answer like 5-second questions. There oftentimes it is a way to have a conversation and to actually understand from the symptom level to a root cause level. And that's also something that good consultants can do. And that also like relieves the pressure from you when you don't know how to answer the question because it seems a little out of the blue. Oftentimes when you kind of like ask follow-up questions, it's like, okay, what does it mean? It's like, oh no, actually, that's not, like, actually, I can, like, this is not what they really are asking, what they really need. What they really need is answering this like core questions or actually having more clarity too. to explore that. So yeah, these were I'll leave it at this point for now because there are so many things that could be said, but yeah, that's what I wanted to share for today. Hope it was helpful. If you found it helpful, then please share a like so I know that you're watching, that you're here, and subscribe to the channels to never miss the episode and the videos. Episodes, not really a series. Video, and I see you when I see you next time.